Welcome to Plot Tales Daily, dramatic Reddit stories with crazy endings? Then you're in the right channel. I'm on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Hit subscribe and join. It's free. You won't want to miss what story is coming next. I, 35F, have proof of my husband's 39M affair with our sitter, 19F. What now? For the longest time, I thought I had a normal marriage. Not fairy tale perfect, but good enough to feel solid. Joe and I had been together for a decade, married for 8 of those years, and we had 2 little boys who adored him. Life was busy but predictable. Both of us worked full-time, we juggled our schedules like every other working couple, and any free time was devoted to the kids. It wasn't always easy, but we made it work. Or at least, I thought we did. Last year, everything started to unravel, though I didn't realize it at first. Back then, we had a childcare problem. Our boys were getting older, and we needed someone who could handle the after-school hours and occasional late nights when work got hectic. I wasn't picky, just desperate to find someone reliable. That's when our neighbor suggested Maggie. She was their 19-year-old daughter, fresh out of high school and living at home while she figured out her next step. She's great with kids, her mom told me, really responsible, and she's looking for work. Maggie came over for an interview, and I liked her immediately. She was polite, cheerful, and had babysitting experience. She even brought references from other families. She wasn't glamorous. Blonde hair, always in a messy ponytail, no makeup, wearing baggy hoodies and leggings. I thought, perfect. She's here to work, not impress anyone. Joe was on board right away. She seems great, he said after she left, and the boys will love her. So Maggie became a part of our routine. She was at the house almost every day, and honestly, it felt like a weight off my shoulders. The boys adored her. She was patient, playful, and kept the house neat. I trusted her completely. But then little things started to shift, and I didn't know what to make of them. It began one random afternoon last July. I came home earlier than usual, one of those rare slow days at work. I walked into the kitchen and there they were, Joe and Maggie standing close, laughing. Not just chuckling either. Maggie was doubled over, wiping tears from her eyes. I froze in the doorway for a second, unnoticed. Joe didn't even look like himself. His face was lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. He glanced up, saw me, and immediately straightened. "Hey, didn't expect you home yet." Maggie smiled a little awkwardly and busied herself with whatever she'd been doing. "Everything okay?" I asked, feeling like I'd interrupted something. "Yeah," Joe said too quickly. "We were just talking about how your youngest tried to build a rocket out of Legos. It was hilarious." I laughed along, but something about the moment stuck with me. It wasn't the kind of thing that screamed affair, but it felt odd. I pushed the thought aside and told myself I was overthinking it. Still, after that, I started noticing more. One day, I was cleaning the guest bedroom. We didn't use it much, but I liked to keep it tidy. While changing the sheets, I found blonde hairs on the pillow. None of us are blonde. Maggie had been the only one in the house with that color hair. I paused, staring at them. Had she laid down there? Maybe she'd gotten tired and taken a quick break. I told myself it was nothing. Maggie worked hard. She deserved a moment to relax. But then there was the car situation, and that was when the first real alarm bells went off. We were eating dinner, me, Joe, and the boys, when Joe casually brought up the idea of buying Maggie a car. "Her car's a piece of junk," he said between bites. I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we helped her out? Got her something safer? I stared at him, fork frozen halfway to my mouth. "Are you serious?" "Yeah, why not? She's great with the kids, and if she's driving them anywhere, wouldn't you want her in a reliable car?" I put my fork down. "We're not buying her a car, Joe. She's our babysitter, not family." "She practically is," he said. "She spends more time here than some of our relatives." "That doesn't mean we're responsible for her car," I snapped. End of discussion. Joe looked irritated but didn't argue further. Still, the suggestion nagged at me. Why was he even thinking about something so over the top? Then Maggie started showing up to work looking different. Gone were the hoodies and sneakers. Now it was fitted skirts, makeup, heels. Her nails were always freshly done and her toenails painted black. Black was Joe's favorite. I'd known that for years. He used to comment on it when I wore the same color. It felt deliberate. But again, I pushed the thought away, not wanting to believe what was slowly becoming obvious. My gut told me something wasn't right, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions without proof. Still, the unease wouldn't go away. Joe and Maggie had gotten too comfortable around each other. The way he looked at her, the way she laughed at his jokes, it wasn't how a babysitter and employer should interact. One night after Joe went to bed, I did something I'd never done before. I checked his phone. There was a group chat with Maggie, me, and Joe where we discussed the boys' schedules. But Maggie's name was also in his recent messages outside of that chat. He'd been texting her privately. When I opened the thread, it looked clean. Too clean. Just a few messages about the boys. I felt sick. I knew he'd deleted something. I spent the next day researching how to recover deleted texts. It wasn't easy, but eventually I figured it out. What I found shattered me. The messages went back months. Joe had been venting to Maggie about our marriage. "She doesn't love me anymore," he wrote. We don't even talk like we used to. I feel like I'm just here to pay the bills." Maggie's replies made my stomach turn. "You deserve better," she said. "You shouldn't have to live like this. I could make you happy." They talked about running away together. Joe promised he'd leave me soon. Maggie said, "Your boys won't even miss her when I'm their new mom." That comment made my blood boil. Who the fuck did this girl think she was? But the final nail in the coffin was on our backyard security camera. I don't know what made me check it. Call it intuition. There it was, Joe and Maggie kissing by the patio. It wasn't a quick peck either. It was full on, like they couldn't get enough of each other. I watched the video twice, numb. It was real. This wasn't in my head anymore. Joe and Maggie were having an affair. I wanted to confront Joe right away, but I stopped myself. If I lost my temper and started screaming, he could deny it or twist things. No, I needed to be smart. I needed a plan. So I played the role of the clueless wife. I smiled at him. I kissed him goodbye in the mornings. I made his favorite dinners. All the while, I was seething inside. I started gathering evidence. I saved screenshots of the texts. I downloaded the video from the security camera. I even met with a divorce lawyer during my lunch break one day. She told me not to confront Joe until everything was lined up. Meanwhile, Joe acted like everything was normal. He came home late more often, always with the same excuse. Work ran long. One night, he smelled like perfume. I asked about it and he said, "Someone at the office sprayed it. It was strong." I wanted to slap him, but instead I handed him his dinner and acted like I believed him. I hated him in that moment, hated myself for pretending, but I wasn't ready to blow things up yet. I kept the charade going for weeks, waiting for the right moment. My lawyer advised me to gather as much evidence as possible before confronting Joe. "You want to control the narrative," she said. "Don't let him manipulate the situation." By this point, I couldn't stand to look at him. Every time he smiled at me or kissed me goodnight, I wanted to scream. The betrayal was like a weight on my chest, but I forced myself to act normal. For the boys, for my sanity. Last Friday, I hit my limit. The boys were asleep and Joe was in the living room watching TV. I sat down across from him holding my phone. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice steady. Joe muted the TV and looked at me, already irritated. "What now?" I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my phone and pulled up the screenshots of his messages with Maggie. I turned the screen toward him. His face changed instantly. He went pale, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to think of something to say. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. I let out a bitter laugh. "Don't insult me, Joe. I know everything." "What are you talking about?" I swiped to the next screenshot, then another. The texts about our marriage, the promises to leave me, the comment about Maggie becoming the boy's new mom. "You're a fucking liar," I said, my voice rising. "You've been sneaking around with her for months. Don't you dare try to deny it." Joe stood up, hands out like he was trying to calm me down. "Listen, it wasn't like that. It got out of hand." "Out of hand?" I repeated, standing too. "You were planning a whole fucking future with her. Don't act like this was some one-time mistake." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was unhappy, okay? I didn't know how to fix things between us, and Maggie—" "Don't you dare blame this on me," I snapped. "You think screwing a 19-year-old is the solution to a rough patch in our marriage?" He stopped pacing and looked at me, defeated. "I'm sorry, I fucked up. I know I did. But we can fix this." I shook my head. "There's no fixing this, Joe. I want a divorce." His face crumpled. "Come on, don't do this. Think about the boys." "The boys?" I laughed bitterly. "You didn't think about them when you were screwing the babysitter." He didn't have an answer for that. I walked out of the room and went straight to the guest bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I didn't want to sleep next to him another night. The next morning, Joe tried to apologize again. He followed me around the house, begging me to reconsider. "I'll end it with her," he said. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." I ignored him and called my lawyer. She advised me to get him out of the house as soon as possible. "The longer he stays, the harder it will be to separate everything," she warned. That afternoon, I told Joe he needed to leave. "Go stay with a friend or a hotel. I don't care where, but you're not staying here." He looked stunned. "This is my house too." "Not anymore," I said. "I've already filed for divorce." His face turned red. "You've got to be kidding me. After everything we've built, you're just throwing it away?" "No, Joe. You threw it away when you started fucking Maggie." He stormed out after that, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. I didn't care. The house felt lighter without him in it. Firing Maggie was next on my list. She showed up for her shift that Monday, acting like nothing was wrong. "Can we talk?" I said as soon as she walked in. She smiled nervously. Sure. Is everything okay?" I folded my arms. "I know about you and Joe. You're fired. Get out." Her face went white. "Wait, what? Don't play dumb," I snapped. "I've seen the texts. I've seen the video. You're not coming back here." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Please, I need this job. I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean to sleep with a married man?" I cut her off. "Save it. Pack your shit and go." She started crying, but I didn't care. I stood there with my arms crossed until she grabbed her bag and left. Now it's just me and the boys. They've been asking where Joe is, and I don't know how to explain it to them yet. Daddy's staying somewhere else for a while, I've been saying. They're too young to understand the truth. Joe has been texting and calling, trying to apologize. I've been ignoring him. There's nothing left to say. I don't know what's next. My lawyer says I have a strong case for custody, and Joe doesn't seem interested in fighting me on it. He's too busy trying to win Maggie back, or so I hear through the grapevine. For now, I'm focusing on the boys and figuring out how to move forward. One thing's for sure, I'm done playing the fool. It's been 2 weeks since I kicked Joe out, and things have only gotten messier. The boys are starting to notice something's wrong. My youngest asked me last night, "When's Daddy coming home?" I didn't know what to say. "Daddy's taking a break," I told him, which seemed to satisfy him for the moment, but Joe? He's been relentless. He started with texts, apologizing over and over. "I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Please let me come home for the boys' sake." When I didn't respond, he started showing up unannounced. Last Wednesday, I was unloading groceries when I saw him sitting in his car at the end of the driveway. I walked over furious. "What the hell are you doing here?" I asked. He stepped out of the car looking like he hadn't slept in days. "I just want to talk." "There's nothing to talk about. You need to leave." "Come on, don't do this," he begged. "I screwed up, okay? But I love you. I love our family." I laughed bitterly. "You should have thought about that before you fucked the babysitter." He winced but didn't move. "Look, I ended it with her. She means nothing to me. It was a mistake." "A mistake you planned for months," I shot back. "Do you think I'm stupid? You didn't just trip and fall into an affair, Joe." He didn't have an answer for that. He stood there looking at me with those sad puppy dog eyes, but I wasn't falling for it. "You need to leave," I repeated, stepping back toward the house. "If you don't, I'm calling the cops." He finally left, but not without one last plea. "Please, don't give up on us." I slammed the door behind me and locked it. As if dealing with Joe wasn't bad enough, Maggie decided to insert herself back into my life. A few days after I fired her, she showed up on my doorstep. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened the door without checking. There she was, standing there with tears streaming down her face. "What do you want?" I snapped. "Please," she sobbed. "I just need to talk to you." "We have nothing to talk about." She shook her head frantically. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I swear, I didn't think he'd leave you." "Leave me?" I barked out a laugh. "You were planning to move into my house and play stepmom to my kids, and now you're acting surprised?" She broke down, full-on ugly crying. "He told me he loved me. He said we had a future together." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "And you believed him? Newsflash, Maggie, if a man cheats with you, he'll cheat on you. You're not special." That seemed to hit her because she stopped crying for a second and just stared at me. "But I really thought he cared about me," she whispered. "Well, he doesn't," I said coldly. "And even if he did, it doesn't matter. You're out of my life and you're not coming near my kids again." She started crying again, but I was done. "Get off my porch, Maggie. Go cry to someone else." I slammed the door in her face and locked it. She stayed outside for a while, sobbing and muttering to herself, but eventually she left. It's been about a month since everything blew up, and I'm finally starting to feel like I can breathe again. Joe hasn't tried to come back, and Maggie has thankfully stayed away. My lawyer says the divorce is moving along smoothly. Joe isn't contesting anything, which honestly surprises me. Maybe he knows he doesn't have a leg to stand on. The boys are doing okay. They've adjusted to not seeing their dad every day, though they ask about him sometimes. I tell them the truth in the simplest way possible. Mommy and Daddy aren't living together right now, but we both love you very much. It seems to work for now, but I know the hard questions will come eventually. As for me, I'm trying to move forward. I've reconnected with some old friends, started going for morning walks, and even signed up for a yoga class. It's not much, but it's a start. I still feel angry sometimes, at Joe, at Maggie, at myself for not seeing the signs sooner, but I refuse to let this define me. I'm stronger than that. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that I deserve better. My boys deserve better, and we'll be just fine without Joe. I wasn't planning to hear much about Joe after he moved out. I was ready to move on, but the universe had other plans. Word travels fast in our neighborhood, and I heard through a friend that Joe's relationship with Maggie has gone up in flames. Apparently, Maggie moved in with him shortly after I filed for divorce. They rented a small apartment a few miles away. According to my friend, who heard it from someone else, Maggie started causing problems almost immediately. "She's immature," the friend said. "She thought living with Joe would be some kind of fairy tale, but she doesn't know how to manage a household or handle real responsibilities." From what I gathered, Maggie was throwing tantrums over Joe not spending enough time with her. "You said you'd be happier with me," she reportedly screamed during one of their public fights. I wish I could have seen Joe's face. She even showed up drunk at his work one day, accusing him of not prioritizing her. That stunt got back to his boss, and now Joe's job is hanging by a thread. When I heard all this, I couldn't help but laugh. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? He thought he could replace me with a 19-year-old who has no clue how the real world works. Now he's stuck cleaning up her messes. Part of me wonders if he regrets everything yet. Not that it matters. I'm done with him. Last weekend, Joe came by to pick up some of his things from the house. I told him to text me first so I could make sure the boys weren't home. I didn't want them to see him, especially not after everything they'd been through. He arrived looking rough. He'd lost weight, his clothes were wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He stood in the doorway awkwardly, holding a box of stuff I'd packed for him. "Can we talk?" he asked. I rolled my eyes. "About what? We're done, Joe." "I know," he said, his voice quiet. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I folded my arms. "It's a little late for that, don't you think?" "I know," he said again, looking down at the floor. I ruined everything. I fucked up. You didn't deserve this. The boys didn't deserve this." His apology caught me off guard, but I wasn't about to let him off the hook. "You think saying sorry fixes anything?" I snapped. "You destroyed our family, Joe. You threw away 10 years for what? A fling with a teenager who doesn't even know how to pay bills?" He flinched at that, but nodded. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed to say it. I'm sorry. I wish I could take it back." For a moment, I almost felt bad for him, but then I remembered everything he'd done. The lies, the betrayal, the heartbreak. I shook my head. "You can't take it back, and even if you could, it wouldn't change anything." He nodded again, looking defeated. "I understand. I'll leave you alone." "Good," I said. "Do something right for once." He left without another word, and I haven't heard from him since. Part of me wonders if that's the last time I'll ever see him. It's been 6 months since everything fell apart, and I can finally say I'm at peace. The divorce is finalized. I have full custody of the boys, and Joe agreed to supervised visitation. He barely shows up for the scheduled times, though, so I'm not holding my breath. The boys are thriving. They've adjusted to the new normal, and I've been focusing on giving them the happiest, most stable life I can. We've started new traditions, movie nights, Saturday morning pancake breakfasts, trips to the park. It feels good to rebuild something positive for them. As for me, I'm in a better place than I ever thought I'd be. I've reconnected with old friends, started journaling, and even went on a few dates. Nothing serious yet, but it's nice to remember that life goes on. Every now and then, I think about Joe and wonder if he ever truly realizes what he lost. But honestly, that's his problem now. I'm done looking back. My boys and I are moving forward, and for the first time in a long time, I feel free. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.